Here I have listed 5 different stocks from the defense sector. Um, of these stocks, I've already analyzed all of them, and I've chosen General Dynamics to be the best to buy right now. And I've highlighted key statistics and ratios from each of these stocks, which is going to prove why General Dynamics is the best to buy right now. But firstly, you can see that I've averaged the last 5 years of all these ratios and the past 3 years of all of these ratios. And I've also taken the sector average of the past 5 year and 3 year here. And by sector, I mean these 5 stocks because these were the stocks that I was able to choose from. So getting started, as you can see here, United Tech has a pretty average cash, current, and quick ratio. Most of these companies in this sector seem to have a pretty low cash ratio, um, but that could just mean they're using their assets more efficiently. So, but for United Tech, these three seem to be pretty par with the average, so that's looking okay. Here, the asset turnover is pretty low compared to the average, but it's made up for with profit margin, as you see here, compared to the average. What I really don't like about this company is the declining ROE. Over the past 3 years, it's went down significantly, which is never a good sign. And also, they had a really hard tax burden in 2017, which isn't looking good. And just to point out, these ratios can be a little tricky to read. 58.64 is standing for the percent kept of EBT, and 88.42 is standing for the amount, the percent kept of EBIT. So that's the way you read those ratios. So you can see here they're averaging a little bit lower than the average for these two. So we don't like that. And you see here in 2017, the EVA was not too good. It's been pretty decent in the years before, but 2017 was a rough year for this company, and I just don't like the declining ROE, so that's why I chose to stay away from this one. The second company, Raytheon, as you can see, they have a little bit more cash on hand than the average, but it's pretty average cash, current, and quick ratios altogether compared to the sector average. Here, the profit margin looks really good for these years, even counting this year going forward, but it dropped significantly in 2017, which is not very good. But the return on equity seems to be really stable in the past 5 years. So depending on your investment strategy, this could be a good thing if you're going for dividends compared to growth. But that's not my strategy, and I don't necessarily care for that. Um, the tax burden was pretty good until 2017, where they had a rough time with the tax burden. But their interest burden is a little bit higher than the average, so that makes up for it a little bit. The price to book ratio is increasing, but not at a heavy rate or a fast rate, so that's looking pretty good. So they don't seem to be overpriced, but uh, they weren't my favorite of the 5 companies. So we'll move on to Lockheed Martin. First, you can see they have really low cash on hand. That could just mean they're using their assets really efficiently, but it's a risk reward payoff there. The rest of these ratios are pretty average with the sector. What you see here is a very high financial leverage statistic. This could be good or could be bad. As you can see here, it's going to lead to a really high ROE. Um, what what this statistic does is going to magnify gains and losses. So uh, their ROE is very distorted, but it is really good. I'm not sure if Lockheed will be able to keep this type of growth up because of their leverage, but we'll see. As you can see here, it jumped pretty significantly from 2015 to 2016, and I'd imagine in 2017 the ROE would be even greater. they didn't have a statistic on that. But for these reasons, um, I don't think they can continue to grow at this rate. So that's why I'm leaning to staying away, especially because you can see here the price to book ratio has increased a lot, which could mean they're overpriced. And if they're overpriced and they're not going to be able to keep up this growth, that could be a bad thing. So we'll move on to the next company. As you can see, they have really high cash ratios. Um, I think it's a little bit too high. They could be using their cash a little bit more efficiently than that. And also, they don't have much inventory, as you can see here. So maybe they're just waiting to make um, a big investment somewhere else. I'm not sure, but that just seems a little bit inefficient to me. Right here, their EBITDA to interest is looking good, but that's not the biggest statistic. Um, their ROE is increasing. It dropped a little bit from 2016 to 2017, but since 2013 to 2017, it looks pretty good. So that's a good statistic for this company. But as you can see here, the tax burden and interest burden aren't up to par with the average. So that's not too good. Uh, and their EVA um, is subpar compared to the sector. So this company, not the worst, but not the best. So we'll continue looking. Um, Here's General Dynamics, and this is why I like this company so much. As you can see, they have a good cash ratio compared to the sector. They're a little bit more liquid than some companies, but that could also be a good thing. But they're not. They don't have too much cash on hand to where they're not being uh, efficient. So I think they're being efficient enough here. They do have a good bit of inventory on hand, which isn't a bad thing. So um, their EBITDA to interest is looking good, and their ROE is looking really good. As you can see here, it's increasing at a good pace, at a good rate since 2013. Um, and here you can see their tax burden is a little bit subpar, but they make up for it with their great interest burden. So we like that. What I really like too is this EVA. They've done really good over the past 3 years. Um, so that's looking really good. And also compared to their price to book isn't growing at a rate that makes it overpriced. I think it's fairly priced or underpriced at this point, so that's why I like it and think it's a buy. The last to compare would be Boeing. You can see their cash ratio in 2017 is really low, but overall, um, it's kind of close to the others. Um, so this is all pretty average. Well, they have a high inventory, but yeah, it's pretty close to average with the other companies. And as you can see, their financial leverage is just like Lockheed. They have a very high leverage position, which is going to cause really high ROEs as seen here. But we'll get to that in a bit. Their EBITDA to interest is really good, and also their asset turnover is really good. So we do like that. But the profit margin kind of takes from their good asset turnover. So that's a give take there. As you can see, their ROE is really, really high compared to 2016 to 2017. It increased significantly. And I bet that's because of this leverage position. So, I mean, I don't think these companies can keep that growth pace up. So for that reason, I think maybe they're going to be a little overpriced and not a great investment at this time. But we'll look at the tax burden and interest burdens. They're looking pretty good compared to the average. Um, but the price to book ratio, as you can see here, it just looks overpriced to me. And although it's a very sound, stable company, I don't think it's a good buy at this time, especially with all the defense stocks looking to take a dip here in the future because the Democrats have taken over the House, and I believe they will cut defense spending. So that could be a short-term dip in all of these companies, but it just seems to me like the bigger companies have more to lose from that. They have really good EVA, in 2017. But like I said, I don't think they can keep that growth rate up to keep that happening every year consistently. So I believe it has to slow down soon, and it might be a good buy after it slows down and becomes a little stable. But right now, I believe it's overpriced. So that's why I'm picking um, General Dynamics over Lockheed and Boeing.